Ezekiel chapter 7, verse 8 reads, "Now will I shortly pour out my fury upon thee, and accomplish mine anger upon thee, and I will judge thee according to thy ways, and will recompense thee for all thine abominations." Now, the book of Ezekiel is one of those books that can seem really kind of strange the first time you read through it. And if you haven't really examined how the narrative works or the organization of the book, it can be one of those ones you start reading and you go, this is a little too strange for me, and you end up setting it aside. But if you go through it and you study it and you look at it carefully, there's a lot of great things that we can learn from the book of Ezekiel. There's a lot of great information, and how it basically works is this. Ezekiel was in the same basic scenario as Daniel found himself in, where the Neo-Babylonian Empire under Nebuchadnezzar had come along and they had conquered the southern kingdom, and they had deported some of the most promising people, and such as Daniel and his companions, and took them back to Babylon where they were being trained to serve. And then other people like Jeremiah got left behind, and then you have people like Ezekiel who were taken prisoner, and they end up in a prison camp. And this is where Ezekiel is ministering. And at this point in the text, Jerusalem hadn't been destroyed. The temple was still standing, and here's Ezekiel telling everybody that surrounds him as a prophet of God, listen, things are going to get worse, things are going to get bad, Jerusalem is going to be destroyed, and the people, they don't believe him. They think he's crazy. And if you read, some of the first chapters of Ezekiel, you look at some of the antics that he does, some of the things that he does, you'd be like, well, if I saw someone doing that, I would think that they're being ridiculous as well. But as what he prophesies begins to happen, we see later in the text the people coming back to him and saying, okay, what else is it the Lord is telling you? Because now we see what you're saying has value. And so what we see as important up to this point is to stay on message. Because when the Lord gives us something to teach the world, and the world looks at us and goes, you guys are crazy, you're insane, that's not how it works, because it doesn't line up with their worldview or with their philosophy. It's important not to change it, because what we are teaching is the truth, what we are saying is right, and there's a chance that, as the Lord works in their lives, they'll come around and realize, okay, there's something to what these people are saying, and then that gives us the opportunity to share more truth and hopefully lead them to the truth of the gospel, help them get to the point where they're willing to get saved and ask for forgiveness, and then we can proceed on with baptism and discipleship and so forth. But if we change and adapt the message in order to make them feel more comfortable, and we remove it from the truth, we take some aspects of truth away, then that's not ultimately going to be helpful. But we also see, as we look specifically at verse 8, this is a prediction that Ezekiel is giving from God, saying, now I will shortly pour out my fury upon thee. The Lord is upset, but notice that it's a proportional upsettedness. It says, and will accomplish mine anger upon thee. I will judge thee according to thy ways, and will recompense thee for all thine abominations. There was punishment coming. This wasn't just because God got some kind of strange jolly out of doing harm to people. It's not because God is just cruel and he doesn't care about us. He was proportionately punishing the people for what they'd done. They had chosen to sin against him. They'd chosen to abandon him. They'd chosen to violate the covenant that they had made with him. And so he was bringing about, in accordance to those things, punishment. And so we have a God who is a just God. We have a God who is very much in control of himself. He's not playing what we might think of as a God-type video game. And I think about the game World Box, where you can create your own world and plant your own tribes and have different kinds of creatures, and you can control pretty much everything. And then if you want, you can just let it go, or you can interact with the different creatures, the different tribes, the different peoples as they develop, or you could just destroy it all. Or, okay, he's not doing that. He cares for each and every one of us. He has a plan that he is going to bring about, and he would very much like us to be a part of it, and he wants us to have a relationship with him. But at the end of the day, if we decide we are going to do that which is wrong, if we decide that we are going to sin, if we decide that we are going to go astray, that is not going to be a consequence-free decision. He's not just going to let that go. And so we're going to be encouraged through the actions of God to turn around and do that which was right. But God is going to punish according to the works that we do. And we see that here in verse 8. He's judging according to thy ways, and will recompense for all thine abominations. We have a God that is just. We have a God that cares about us. We have a God that wants us to do that which is right, but we also have a God who is absolutely going to punish sin. And that's something that the world needs to know. That's something that we need to keep in mind. And what's really important is that the world needs the message that the Lord has given us to offer, even if we find ourselves in challenging circumstances, as did Ezekiel. Stay on message, teach the truth, and allow the world to come around as they're guided by the Holy Spirit.